All right, welcome to the College Hockey News Insiders podcast. We are now trying video, so we'll see how this goes. But if you're just listening, hello as well on your usual podcast software. Mike McMahon is with me. We have not done anything since the end of the Frozen Four, which, I guess we could catch up at that. The thing is, the news came so fast and furious after the season ended that I'm not really sure. Someone was asking me, how come you didn't wrap up the Frozen Four, do like a breakdown? I'm like, because the portals opened the next day, and then it was chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fast and furious, right? It was actually a month ago today, right? April 11th was the national title game. So as we record this, it is exactly a month since the season ended. But yeah, it's like that national title game was Saturday, late afternoon, evening, and 48 hours later, not even 48 hours later, 36 hours later, bam, like we were right into the portal, and there were more than 300 players that went in, and like 180 of them that went in the first 6 hours or whatever it was.
And as we know, most of them all knew what was going on or going to happen up to like months in advance, perhaps. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But I do want to just mention the Frozen Four. And when we last left you was in the pregame show for the Frozen Four championship game. And then, of course, Denver won in a game eerily reminiscent to the game from 2022 against the Mike Hastings-led Minnesota State Mavericks. This one was against Wisconsin. And, I mean, what more can you say about the way Denver finds a way to win? After a while, it's not a coincidence. But this was probably not their strongest team top to bottom. They obviously had the great run by Johnny Hicks, which is just an incredible story. I don't think enough was made of the fact that he was committed to Tennessee State originally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just an incredible thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy, right? Like, had they not had to delay the start of their program, who knows if he ever ends up at Denver. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he would have ended up there anyway, but I think there's a really strong chance that he probably wouldn't have. He wouldn't have been available because it was kind of late in the game.
Yeah.
And does this run ever happen had they not had to press pause on the launch of their program? Kind of nuts.
Yeah, I mean, he may have went there eventually, just not that first year. Maybe he would have transferred the second year, right? Yeah. But we'll get to all of that too. But yeah, again, what more can you say about Denver? I'm trying to remember the details at this point of the game, but obviously low shot totals first couple periods, and then they figured out a way. Wasn't quite the 5-goal outburst that they had in 2022 against Minnesota State, but still, tremendous job by them, obviously. So, and
like
then
I said, you can't make a habit of picking against Denver in April and March anymore. It's just I've tried to not do that. I didn't have them win the tournament this year, but again, I kind of feel like until proven otherwise, we just have to assume they're going to be there and have a pretty damn good shot at winning the whole thing.
And look at what they've done since then, or even while it was going on, right? They've apparently committed 2 high-end players. Ryan Lynn, right, is like sort of a smaller defenseman, but supposed to be a first-rounder, right?
Yep.
And then Blake Fiddler.
Yeah, he's the other one. Second-rounder last year. So 2 pretty high-end defensemen coming in to help fill some holes on that D-core, which they're going to have. I mean, they lost a couple of guys, obviously, as you would expect. Good players move on. But, I mean, will they be as effective as Eric Polkamp? Who knows? Maybe not right away, but I have to imagine one of those guys is going to slide right into that spot.
Yeah, and of course, because of what happened with Johnny Hicks, the obvious, changing of the guard, I guess you could say, as far as the goaltending is concerned, because, it was supposed to be Quentin Miller, and really not a shock whatsoever that he winds up at Western Michigan in the transfer portal, since they lost Anton Slukinski after 2 seasons to a pro contract. So the goaltending shuffle, as it were, and again, we're going to get to more of that in a second. So, but yeah, I mean, we might as well get into it now because, again, what more can you say about the Frozen Four? Hey, man, I thought, the games were fine. I didn't think, I guess one last thing on that is that Michigan, goes in as somewhat of a favorite. I think unlike past years, I don't think they did anything wrong. They just got Denvered, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, in the past they had goaltending, which was not great, let's say, or they had discipline issues. I don't think that was the case this year. I think this year was just a hockey game. And if you play that game again, Michigan could just as easily win it. So I know it's still weird that the Big Ten still hasn't won a national championship, but I don't think that's because of anything other than sort of coincidence this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with you, too. I feel like those Michigan teams, the ones that have been there before, they weren't huge flaws, but those teams had little flaws that could be exploited and were. This team didn't really have those flaws. It's just they had two really good teams that came up against each other. One of them has to win. Like you said, it's a coin flip of a game. I mean, you play that game 100 times, both teams probably win about 50, right? It just happened to be Denver's night on that night on that Thursday. So that was the most complete. I think we've talked about it throughout the course of the year. That was the most complete Michigan team I think they've had since Brendan Rado's been there. The most complete team that they've had.
Yep, absolutely. So now let's talk about, first of all, College Hockey News, we've been pumping up these special reports. I had part one, which was about a lot of the tampering that takes place during portal season. Part two was laying out who has the money and who doesn't. Both of those are still on the website. Check them out. Long articles. Had my wife read them. She was like, I got to read this 3 more times to understand what the heck's going on. Yeah, I'm like, pretty much everyone does at this point. But I tried to do the best I could on that. Now, there was supposed to be a part 3, which was going to be a little bit more opinionated and also player-oriented, what their perspective on all of this. And then the bombshell, I guess it shouldn't have been we kind of rumblings of what was going to go on. But the NCAA sort of at the Frozen Four essentially was just like, yeah, we're doing this. We're going to change the age eligibility requirements. And so that put sort of a damper on part 3 because we had other things to worry about, as it turns out. And that rule, again, and that's on College Hockey News, check it out. If you don't know, basically the NCAA is trying to standardize age across all sports. College hockey always had a delayed enrollment rule that allowed basically 20-year-old freshmen after junior hockey to come in and still have 4 years of eligibility. Now there's going to be 5 years of eligibility across the board, but your clock will start ticking at your supposed high school graduation date, and you'll not be able to delay your graduation from high school, as some people thought, by going to post-grad or something.
Yeah.
That slow-rolled it.
High school.
Yeah, it starts ticking essentially when your 9th grade was supposed to start for you.
Or when you enroll, is the way I understand it, right? So, like, if you repeat your grade 8 year,
right,
that doesn't affect you.
Right, but who's going to have that foresight? I mean, some psychopathic parents might. I don't know.
It's funny, like, I was saying to somebody the other day, and it's because of where I live in the market that it is. That happens a lot in the Northeast now with prep schools. And I see it from two sides because my wife teaches at a private school. Not a prep school, a private K through 8 school. And they have students that will go to public middle school through their grade 8 year, come to their school, which is a Catholic school, for 1 year to repeat their 8th grade year and then enter as freshmen the following year. It doesn't happen very often. Like, they're not like they're getting 10, 12 kids a year they're doing that. It's usually like 1 or 2. But it does happen because people are crazy, parents are insane. And I don't know, like it may become more the norm because I think somebody's going to want. You should have the foresight, I think, to try to, if you think your child has the ability to compete at that level, to have them go in, have their options open, have them be able to go in as an 18 or 19-year-old, and I don't know. Is that what we want? We want kids repeating their 8th grade year for athletics? Probably not. But it could lead to that. And I've already seen some of it now. I saw it the last 2 years. There was a hockey player and a basketball player, both that repeated their 8th grade year at my wife's school, which is kind of
nice. There are so many facets to this. We're going to be here a while. But now when this was first coming down the pike, I'm thinking, okay, first of all, I don't like the 5-year thing for all other sports. I don't think it's as big a deal in hockey, and we're a hockey show, so we'll focus on that. But I do want to get this out of the way. Like, let's just say, pick a sport, cross country, okay? There's very little mystery about it. You go to high school, you run, you go to college, you get a scholarship, you go 4 years, normal 4 years, 18 to 22. Now if you add a fifth year eligibility, that takes away roster spots from seniors, incoming freshmen. I mean, seniors in high school. That eliminates opportunities for, literally tens of thousands, because there's 500,000 kids in NCAA sports across the board. I tried to explain this to some people. I didn't think it was that difficult to understand, but I got into arguments, lo and behold, on social media, trying to explain to people why this was actually, to me, it's just math. In hockey,
it's the same thing as the CHL. It's the pool's bigger.
Yeah. Obviously, if there's 20 roster spots on your cross-country team and 5 of them are taken by each class, well, now 4 will be taken by each class because there's 5 classes.
Yep.
So that is 1 kid per year, per team, on every sport across the country that will lose an opportunity at a scholarship. Now, like I said, in hockey, because kids will still go to junior, and the 18-year-olds that come to college hockey are not sticking around for 5 years.
Exactly.
And the 19-year-olds that are coming to college hockey will have 4. So in that case, it will not really be a whole lot different. The one thing I worried about was, a couple things. It's still going to hurt the schools that rely on a lot of older players. And they've already been hurt enough, And I am one who, I want to see more competitive balance. I realize I'm not stupid. Most of the time, that you can't have, an NHL-like competitive balance in college sports. But one thing after another for the last 5, 6, 7 years has gone against the little guy. So there's that, right? But then also, then I was told that in Quebec, especially in other parts of Canada, you actually graduate high school at 17. Now, I've talked since then to, I specifically spoke to Casey Jones, for example, who is French-Canadian. His name doesn't sound like it, but he fluent in French. So Quebec's a good market for Cornell. And he told me not to worry, so I'm not going to worry. He said that, there's still like that 18th year where you go to some sort of essentially like what's a post-grad kind of thing, but the NCAA has always counted that as high school. So, okay, let's just say that's going to happen. I still think that all of the inroads that college hockey, remember last year at this time we were like, wow, all these guys are all of a sudden coming from major junior. Like, NCAA hockey has won, this argument. Well, now, if all of a sudden, the 20-year-old who's aged out, never mind the Martones of the world, but if the 20-year-old who's aged out can now no longer get a 4-year education at an NCAA school and play, I imagine some percentage of them will say, forget it. I don't know. We don't know how this is going to play out, but
potentially. I know. It's interesting, right? Because it depends on what their goal is. If their goal is to go and get a degree, then it becomes less attractive. There's been plenty of players, CHL, and as we saw this past year with quite a few teams bringing in some pro guys that came in knowing they were only going to get 2. Like, there was a lot of guys that came in that were 22 or 23 years old that played in the East Coast League last year, but they knew they were only getting 2 years, and they still came because their goal is to try to get an NHL contract, not an East Coast contract, right? So maybe it remains to be seen, I think. Like, we don't really know the impact it's going to have, but I would agree with you that if I had to guess what was going to happen, I would guess that there's going to be a group of players that look at it and say, if I can't go get a degree, I'm just going to go play in the East Coast League now if that's where I'm going to end up anyway.
Yeah. And, again, so I think the impact may not be, like, drastic, but it's just another thing, that will affect the teams that rely upon those older players. Now, you get, again, some percentage of people out there who I've been arguing with. Hey, this is great for college hockey. Why should it be 20-year-old freshmen? We should have 18-year-old freshmen, just like normal kids. And you know what? After this report came out about this junior guy in USA Today this week, it's hard to argue that some junior things are pretty horrible these days for kids, right? Being shuffled team to team. I mean, some of it is their own, though. I mean, but, look, the junior system has issues. However, as I always say with the NCAA as a whole, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, we can fix the junior issues. They should be fixed. There are plenty of things to fix. But upending the entire hockey ecosystem for this, like I always say, like, why does it bother you that kids are 20-year-old freshmen? I never really get good answers. I mean, some of them say, like, okay, well, my kid wants to start their college career like all his friends are at 18. But how many really care? I don't know. I would take a poll. And my other thought on that too is, like, if you really do want to go to college at 18, play it for a Division III school.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's really what you're worried about. But what is the purpose? Look, I don't mind if a kid can 18, 19, 20, but you talk to some of the coaches at some of the smaller schools, and by the way, when I say smaller schools now, I'm talking like that's like half the country. They're like, we don't want to have to be recruiting 18-year-olds that aren't ready for college hockey. And I think the biggest answer to this one rebuttal is, like, there isn't a high school system in 95% of the country. And when you look at how college,
in one state.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at how USA Hockey has grown, where, like, if you look at the World Junior Program team, and there's kids from all over the country, none of them went to high school, other than, like you said, a state or two.
Yeah.
And so they have to go to juniors at some point, and that's just part of the ecosystem. Now, you could say, okay, well, they can also go to juniors and leave at 18. Yeah, but it's, I don't know. You're talking about upending the whole thing. Anyway, I'll let you go here. I got a little more to say on the legalities of it, but go ahead if you got anything.
Yeah, I just don't like, again, I don't like how the NCAA applies these blanket rules across all sports without really understanding the intricacies of each sport. They did it with the roster caps. They've done it with a lot of this stuff. And I think that's the source of my frustration, and I think that's the source of a lot of the frustration from people like coaches and athletic directors and commissioners and everybody else, where it's like, what, it might sound good on paper. I can certainly see why a lawyer in an office in Indianapolis looks at that and says, we're just going to make the same thing across the board because legally speaking, that's the easiest thing for us to do. Sure, makes sense. But when you start to really break this down sport to sport, does it really make sense? Should the sports have a little bit more of a say on how this stuff gets governed? And I know it seemed to be the frustration. I'm sure we'll talk about it with what the coaches were presented with in Florida last week. Like, they had their NCAA's chief legal officer came down to talk to the coaches in Florida. They stated their case, and I don't know if you got a different reaction. All the reaction I got were coaches going, I will give them credit. They listened to us. But then they just told us, after they were done listening, they told us that they weren't going to change anything.
You can't get the entire college hockey coaching body to agree that the sky is blue. And they all agreed that they do not want this rule. Even the schools in the Big Ten who would benefit from this do not want to upend the ecosystem of hockey as a whole. And there was a lot of coaches who stood up and made points, very articulate. Some, more than others were more outspoken. And like you said, I think the problem is, like, it was just kind of foisted on them late without a chance to really rally the troops. There is like a window here before the council votes where they're hoping to still get an ear. I know that some of the coaches were frustrated that the people who were going to be in front of this council maybe weren't being aggressive enough with, like, solutions. They were just sort of like focusing on, well, how is this transition going to work? Because that's a problem too. I mean, how is the kids already in the pipeline going to be affected by this? but they want to see them be more aggressive on it. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, I talked to one coach yesterday who was like, again, trying to give me the optimistic side of this, like there's still time. I had one of the commissioners tell me that USA Hockey, the USHL, and the NHL are all behind college hockey here for what they want the NCAA to do. But, like, are any of them picking up the phone and calling Charlie Baker and screaming at him over this? Or, like,
And would it even matter? I mean, that's
I don't know.
I think personally, like, the reason they're cramming this through so quickly is because they don't want people to galvanize behind it. Because the NCAA and Charlie Baker sees this as a solution to stop their lawsuits. I don't agree with that. I think it's just going to create another version of lawsuits. I mean, the lawsuits aren't going to go away. The ones they're facing now might, but it's just going to create more. So exactly. I don't think it solves their legal issues the way they think it's going to solve their legal issues. But I think that's why they're cramming it through, is because they probably know it's not going to have real widespread support. So the only way to get this through and get it through quickly is don't give people time to really rally against it. We announce it in April, we vote on it in May, it gets implemented in June, because it doesn't give people time to organize and try to stop it.
Well, that's been my exact argument, which, as you know, in my latest column, where, again, we had part 1, part 2 of the special report, pause to deal with all of this, write my column last week about this new stuff, and that was one of the points I made in there, that there are solutions. And we'll get to that in a second, but that's exactly what I said. Like, what makes anybody think that this will stop the lawsuits? Again, why are they doing this? Supposedly because the Indiana, for example, football had a bunch of older players that were on like 6th, 7th year eligibility because of red shirts and this, that, and the other thing, and they don't want that to be the case anymore. And then players are suing them for eligibility, and they just want to stop that. Okay. Great, so you've standardized the rule. They think that standardizing the rule will stop it. But what stops a 20-year-old hockey player in junior from suing them for 4 years of eligibility still? Yeah. Like, come on. Like,
here's one, too. What about the seniors we saw some enter the portal. I know a bunch did in basketball, too. What about the seniors that are going to graduate or are graduating this week? So
they're going to have a whole new set, like you said.
They don't get the extra year if they qualified, but the guy that comes in next year does. The junior, the guy that's one class behind them, if he qualifies for an extra year, can apply to the NCAA to get it.
Yeah.
But I graduate this year and I don't. I mean, that to me sounds, not an attorney, that sounds to me like it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah. So
I think it's to get away from the lawsuits. I also think they don't want to rule on red shirts anymore. Let's face it. Like you said, look, how many sports did the NCAA sponsor? Quite a few.
Yeah, 40 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, think of how many red shirt waivers they have to go through and then read and determine and rule on every year. I mean, it takes a boatload of administrative work completely out of the equation for the NCAA.
That's fine. I mean, I hate the 5th year because of the reasons I said before, but focusing just on hockey, that part of it won't be a big deal. So I don't have a problem with it. I think, so the solution, as I put in the column, and this is I'm pretty sure where the coaches are also galvanizing behind, is like, why is the date of your theoretical high school graduation? Why are you using that as the standard? You can use 19 as the max to get 5 years, okay? And
because everybody
still
can
be
do
fine.
A gap year. That's important. Like, football and basketball players can do a gap year.
They're not going to do it.
They can do a post-grad year if they wanted to and start at 19. Like, that happens with some basketball players now. Like, it's not crazy uncommon.
But also, no one's going to take the year off, right? Like, this idea that, like, I'm going to take the year off. Like, is a football senior, like, going to take the year off? I
get gap years are wrong. I meant like a post-grad year.
Yeah.
There's in football and basketball, there's players right now that will go play at a prep school, do a post-grad year, and then go to college.
And then there's nothing wrong with gap years, by the way.
And then redshirt for 2 years and graduate at 27 or whatever it is. But, I mean, that happens now. Like, that's why I agree with you. Why not 19? So that way, obviously, for the junior hockey system, it helps juniors. And for every other athlete, if you're graduating as a high school senior and you don't feel like you're physically ready to go play college sports yet, you can go do a post-grad year at a prep school and then come in at 19.
Absolutely. I mean, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that approach. And then, of course, the 20-year-old will still get 4 years in hockey. And again, that's not really going to happen in other sports. So I don't see the downside of it other than this like sanctimonious contingent that's college sports should start at 18. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, even the Ivy League schools for non-athletes recommend gap years for their students, and there's been a lot of research on this. As to I was arguing with somebody again, probably some parent who is, what's up with the gap years? And I'm like, look, I mean, the research is pretty clear that if someone is taking the gap year but staying focused on their goals, which in this case in sports, I mean, you're on a junior team where you're still focused, right? Then it's hugely beneficial just as a student. And when you look at the graduation rates in hockey compared to other sports, it's pretty high.
Oh,
and a lot of people attribute that.
95%.
Yeah, a lot of people attribute that to the maturity of it being an older player coming in. So anyway, will this happen? Who knows? If not, just batten down the hatches for some more chaos. We'll know in the next couple of weeks. We'll be right back here in a month or so with another special. But before we take a break, again, there's so many facets to that, wrap our head around. But let's get back to the actual transfer portal and the tampering, first of all, which is sort of off the charts. But, as I said in my piece then, if everybody's tampering, then no one's tampering at this point. At this point, it's the Wild West. No one cares, and no one can do anything about it. So it is what it is, right? And it's not great, but no one really sees a solution at this point. So I know the NCAA has talked about some things to kind of rein it in, but I don't see anything really doing that yet. So overall impressions of the transfer portal, all the craziness, the winners and losers and all this. I know you had a great statistical breakdown which showed like the net positive chip rating.
Which I have to update.
All Big Ten?
Yeah, I have to update that. So the Big Ten, let's see, I do have it here. The Big Ten at that point in time was the only one that was still that had gained chip rating. Okay, and that was early on. That was like a week in. So there's been a lot more commitment since then. Now 3 conferences have gained in their overall.
Oh, really?
I bet you could guess the 3.
Well, yeah. But who were some of those late pickups that contributed to that? I'm curious.
Well, when I had initially did it, I think I did it the Saturday after the portal opened. So I was only like 6 days in. That was so. Some guys had not announced commitments yet. That was the thing.
Right.
But the Big Ten far and away. So overall, the Big Ten is plus 365.7 in overall chip added. The NCHC plus 75.9. Hockey East plus 41.7. Then on the other side of that, every other league's in the negative. CCHA is negative 57. ECAC negative 183. Atlantic Hockey negative 405. And the Independents negative 435. So
honestly, that just says it all, and we have talked about this before, and this is also in my piece. Like, no Atlantic hockey coach is going to sit there and say, "Oh my God, the sky is falling, and we can't do anything." They're not going to just act that way publicly, right? They're not going to ever admit that we're up a creek. But I mean, come on, do those numbers say it all?
Yeah. And let's look at the teams. Top 5 teams in chip added: Wisconsin 1, North Dakota 2, Notre Dame 3, Minnesota 4, Michigan State 5. And the top 5 are the top 5 teams in chip lost. Mercyhurst, obviously, they lost the whole team, so let's not even count them. Yeah. It would be Lindenwood, Anchorage, Brown, RPI, and St. Cloud. St. Cloud had
so a couple of those there had coaching changes, right? Brown and St. Cloud. Lindenwood's been decimated, which is crazy because, they had a pretty decent team, and there you go, right? So, and they're in Indy. Maybe the Indies are even worse off.
I think they are. Based on these numbers, yes, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Keith Fisher a couple of weeks ago, actually, Lindenwood's coach, and we were talking about that. And again, he'll say, okay, but then I can get other players and that's true. You can get other players to replace them, but that constant churn is what would worry me if I was a coach. You look at Cornell, for example, the team I follow as closely as anybody, and they lost their goaltender, Alexis Cornwallet, who comes in, had a good season. I wouldn't say off the charts season, but a pretty good season as a freshman for Cornell. They got him late last year from the Quebec League. He's a little bit of a late bloomer. And after 1 year, he's like, well, I'm going to go to Wisconsin. And I'm like, okay. Now the Ivy Leagues, I think, in general, don't lose a lot because the kids that go there, want it. But this is just an interesting example. So then they dip into Maine and get Rousseau from Maine, who may be just as good as Cornway, right? I mean, maybe he's better than. I mean, his numbers were not great last year, but Maine had its struggles. But he was highly touted. He's a major junior goalie, right? I mean, not major junior. I'm sorry, world junior. I meant to say. But what I worry about, and maybe it's just me, is that when you're constantly having that turnover, it's like, okay, maybe this kid is as skilled as that one, but it's causing chaos in your program, the culture building, the whole, all that stuff. It's just a constant churn, and it's hard.
I've had coaches say to me, and I think it's right now. I don't have to like it, but I think it's the reality. They've said, we don't really build programs anymore. You have to build the best roster you can for next season. Because after that, nothing else is you might have a great freshman class coming in. Who says you're going to keep them? Who says they're going to be back for their sophomore year, right? So I know a lot of coaches are making decisions now, which is not what would have been the case 5 or 6 years ago, are making decisions now just based on what decision gives me the best team next year. I'm not worried about 2 years from now because I can't. Just what's the best team next year. And I don't think that would have been the case necessarily before. There was more long-range, long-term thinking before because there could be.
Yeah.
And now that just almost doesn't exist at all. You got a bunch of coaches that are trying to build the next best team for the following year.
There's so many facets to this. We've talked about it for the last 2-3 years nonstop. We'll talk about it for the next 10 years nonstop as well. So we don't have to try to sum it all up here. But that's just some of the things that we're just constantly looking at, thinking about. We're not going to know all the ramifications for a while, but it does seem clear the further consolidation. This is nothing against the Big Ten schools. I have nothing against any of them individually. It's just as a fan of college hockey for many years and, the beauty of it, all the schools with some semblance of ability to compete. I mean, again, Union lost its best player. Union's a great example because obviously in 2014, not only did they have some guys who probably would have transferred to bigger schools if that was capable, but they also had 6 players who were 2010 birth year. Sorry, maybe Joe, my math is right. 1990 birth years.
Yes.
Right in 2014, they had 2 players that were already 24, and then 4 more that were going to be 24 by the end of the year. So if these. So the combination of the transferring, the new NCAA age rules, it's like one thing on top of the other. Forget that, Union team ever winning again in the future. They're not going to say that.
I don't want to. I mean, it's hard. I'm on this guy's head, so maybe who knows. I don't think Shane Gostisbehere would have been on that team if the transfer portal and revenue sharing existed.
100%.
Because you know what? North Dakota or Michigan or somebody was going to be here's $75,000. Come be our number 1 D.
And 100%. And Daniel Carr and Daniel Ciampini, who scored 23 goals that year as a junior, as a 23 turning 24-year-old, may not have even been eligible for that team. Matt Bodie, I believe, was a 24-year-old. He was their captain defenseman. So, I mean, just one thing after another. Like I said, between the transfer portal and the age rules, forget it. So, like I said, it's just a shame to me, but we'll see how it all plays out. We'll have plenty more to talk about as we go on. I did want to say, thank you very much, Daniel Hauser, I guess, just kind of wrapping this all up. Wisconsin's Frozen 4 goalie, who's then Alexis Cornwallet goes to Wisconsin. I mean, never minding how that all came down and caught Cornell off guard. And, one thing led to another, because obviously Hicks was going to be at Denver, so then Miller has to go somewhere. I know Western was sort of in the mix for Cornway. He goes to Wisconsin instead, then Western plucks Miller from, fill that gap. It's just like this crazy cycle, which is fascinating in one sense, but like I said, hurts a lot of other teams. But yeah, thank you very much, Daniel Hauser. I guess
one
they're
thing
going
I
to
just find kind of charming about the portal, though, is every year there seems to be one of these. There's like a Holy Cross Quinnipiac trade in the portal almost every year. And obviously Bill Riga worked for Rand Pecknold for a long time. But I just find that it's very funny to me that like almost every single year there's a trade like, hey, the best player in Holy Cross is going to end up going to Quinnipiac. But Quinnipiac is like, you know what? This guy wasn't getting time for us, but he's going to pop and be a stud for you. Like there seems to be one of those every year. And I just think it's very funny.
It is crazy. All right, like I said, we can talk forever. We're going to take a break, come back, and talk about a whole bunch of other things in just a second. Well, let's get to a myriad of other topics in addition to the NCAA rules, transfer portal, tampering, yada, yada, yada. How about, first of all, you weren't at the Frozen Four with me, but I talked to Rick Gockin of Mercyhurst about them dropping the program. It comes at the same time that the Indies are theoretically adding Maryville. Now, it looks like they're going to play somewhere around 20 games against Division I teams, which is not enough theoretically to qualify for the NCAA tournament, but it is enough to be considered a Division I independent team. And the idea is that they're going to be full schedule as of next season. So for now, they're in that Indy mix. So easy come, easy go. And I think we have their roster on College Hockey News already because they've already got about 25 guys lined up, some of which were on their club team already. Others were not. And so, I mean, that's good. But with Mercyhurst, what I wanted to ask you is that with Mercyhurst dropping out, Atlantic Hockey is down to 9, and they may be coming calling for somebody pretty soon. And then all of a sudden the Indies are back to 5 or 4, whatever the heck it is, and that diminishes the potential for them to all be in a conference eventually together.
Yeah, I would assume. So Atlantic Hockey is not going to add anybody for next year. It's just too late. I would think they're going to want to get to 10 because it gives them a couple of things. It makes it easy to schedule, right? A lot easier to schedule. It also gives them some buffer. I mean, they've lost programs in back-to-back years, so it gives them some buffer if another one were to unfortunately drop. So I think they'll want to get to 10. The most likely candidates, I mean, it's not a big secret. Stonehill and Long Island both seem like the two most likely scenarios. LIU's putting a bunch of money into their program this year that the rink they're playing with out of the Islanders practice facility is going to be branded LIU, and I think they have a partnership with the Islanders for like the next 5 years or something like that.
By the way, LIU, as you know, their program was just slapped with sanctions, but that did not affect hockey.
Yes.
So I don't think it's going to have any impact on hockey there. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And then Stonehill is moving on building their rink on campus, which I think would make them a lot more attractive to Atlantic Hockey. So one of those two. I mean, who knows? Maybe they take both of them. Maybe they decide to take them both. 11's weird, but hockey?
Yeah, I mean, you talk to some people, it's like, hey, maybe if these indies get together and start talking about being a group of 6, and instead of them waiting around for a conference to invite them, just push the issue, and then when they do get enough to get an automatic bid, that's going to force perhaps some other leagues to say, wait a minute, either the NCAA tournament has to expand, which is another topic, or Atlantic just takes them in, and then that solves that problem. So, in other words, people are trying to grease the wheels somehow or another because, as you know, just things take forever. People talk about stuff all the time. Nothing ever happens. So, we'll see. I'm sure Atlantic Hockey's having these conversations. If it was me, I'd take them all, But I know they always say, well, these schools, we have to make sure when it's not our duty But I mean, these are viable. They're just as, like you said, Stonehill, the new arena, LIU with where they're going, Maryville with the upgrades to their arena and where they're going. They're just as solid shape as any other program, really. Maybe not every program in Atlantic, but enough, right? So
yeah. I mean, I hate to put it this way because it leaves a couple of teams out. But
yeah, I know.
It's easy to look at the independents and say, hey, you know what? Like LIU and Stonehill make logical sense for Atlantic hockey. The Lindenwood and Maryville make logical sense for CCHA. But then you get, what do you do with the Alaska schools? Like those are the two that don't seem to have a natural fit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, once again, you hate to say it, but they're up a creek.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. It really is. I don't mean to laugh at them. I mean, it's really just really unfortunate. I mean, no matter how you slice it,
voting to take on that travel every year. I just don't.
Yeah, no matter how you slice it, they're always going to be up against it, unfortunately, and there's not enough money to be earned to, compensate for what they have to do to survive. I mean, they can't, pay money, pay guarantees to these other schools and whatever. It's just hard. There's nothing you can do. And it is a shame. But all these machinations are certainly going to leave them out if that's what happens. So, that's why I've been hoping for a 6-team league that includes them.
Yeah.
And Eric Largen's a great coach. We just saw Matt Shasby from Anchorage. I don't know if he was pushed out or left. Whatever it is, it's almost impossible for Anchorage. I mean, look at the transfer portal and what goes on there every year. But Eric Rude at St. Cloud, assistant coach there, St. Cloud alum, he decides he wants to take the job. So God bless him. I hope it works out. You know what I mean? But it is hard. Obviously, he did not get the job at his alma mater, which went to Nick Oliver, another alum who was coaching at Wisconsin. So what do you do? But I've also heard, by the way, that Tennessee State, everyone should just kind of get them out of their mind at this point. Again, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of heard the same. It was weird. About a month ago, I had a couple of coaches tell me that they were making phone calls, trying to put a schedule together, but nobody was very optimistic.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
from what I understand, you kind of forget. They haven't even answered my calls. They did in the past. Let's put it that way. So
yeah,
I sent out a feeler to say what was up. Someone reminded me today too that wasn't Binghamton making noise about Division I at some point.
Yeah,
whatever happened to that?
That all kind of went away. I don't know if it was budgetary stuff. There was talk that they were going to play, I think, at the rink that's downtown where the Devils AHL team used to play.
That's the Broome County Arena, yeah.
Yes.
Whatever it's called now. It's probably got some corporate name rights, but
probably. But what it was, if I remember correctly, I believe Binghamton was the one where they had a new athletic director,
right.
And he just mentioned it, in introductory press conference or in one of the first interviews that he did. But it's long range and it's a long ways away if it's going to happen. I haven't heard anything in motion for a while. But that would be another one. You're talking about Atlantic hockey. That'd be another one for them that was a nice geographical fit anyway.
And really, Atlantic probably should be splitting back. And now it's funny to say that after they've lost 2 teams the last 2 years. But, ideally, there would be 2 leagues out of all these teams in some way, shape, or form. And ideally on top of that, the NCAA tournament goes to at least 20 teams. Now, I know you put your proposal out for 24, and I know some coaches want 24, some want 20, some just want to stay at 16. So, again, go back to, you can't get 63 coaches to agree on anything, and it's going to be another one of those things that go around and around. But, some coaches are like, yeah, whatever, but we have other things to worry about. There's all these different opinions out there. The 24 is interesting. I just don't know if the NCAA is going to approve it. It's funny because Mike Cavanaugh, UConn, always says to me, what do you mean NCAA rule, against, more than 25? All rules are out the window at this point. We're giving players millions of dollars. Who cares about the freaking rules? So that's his point of view, which some coaches share.
I don't necessarily disagree with him. But it's funny because I was having a conversation with somebody last week, and we were talking about the percentage of teams. You can't be over 25, but they don't want over 25% of the teams to make the tournament. I actually think that the fact that college hockey's roster of teams is smaller is more of a reason to expand it. Especially now, like if you were to know, and again, we're talking about people in the NCAA that might not really understand just hockey here, but if they were aware that they just really put the player pool on steroids with the number of players that are eligible now that weren't before, it's one of the few sports where, like, I'm not saying team 20, 21, or 24 or whatever would win, but they get a chance to win a couple of games. Like, this wouldn't be a 16 seed beating a 1 seed in the NCAA basketball tournament where it almost never happens, or what's it happened one time or whatever it was. Like, you could see
twice, actually, but yes, it's very rare. It's only in the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
That it's happened twice now.
I can only think of one off the top of my head, but
yeah.
Usually we're in the middle of conference tournaments that weekend. So
I know.
But yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying they would win the national title, but I mean, like, we just had a 12 seed overall that made the Frozen Four, and we've had 4 seeds make it before. And I'm not saying even get to the Frozen Four, but like, could Team 19 win a game or two? Well, probably, I think they could. Especially, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why a lot of people say, like, look, in hockey it's so close. But of course, I've been lamenting the fact that the top, 8 or so is basically breaking off into its own stratosphere. So, I'm worried no one's going to penetrate that, or very rarely, one team in and out. But, but meanwhile, of course, the regional debate rages on. And I always joke with, some of the newer coaches, like, look, I've been hearing this stuff for 30 years. It never changes. Everyone goes to Florida. Everyone talks around and around. Now, obviously, it's heated up in recent years because there's been some louder voices who have been really trying to push, but it still hasn't really gone anywhere. What I was told this year is that it's the first time anyone ever felt like, at least in people's minds, wrapping their heads around changing it, gained some momentum, because I think the concept that the conference tournament champions would get a home game put a lot of people over onto the side of, like, sure, why not? So that's one of the things, in case you haven't heard, that's been thrown out there, that, if you win the Atlantic Hockey Championship, you're going to get a home game no matter what. Now that, again, that, you get your atmosphere that everyone wants because, Sacred Heart will certainly sell out their 2,500 seats or whatever it is, and it'll be loud and it'll be fun. But, you won't get what is supposed to be because, they're typically the 16th overall seed and they shouldn't get a home game. But, hey, they will get a home game. So I think some people can live with that.
I hate that proposal, actually, even just regular home site regionals. I mean, think about it. Like, so in most years, we're going to take the 16 seed away from the 1 seed.
Yeah.
They can what? I don't know how.
About every year.
They would play the 9 seed in the first round?
That would be like probably 12 or,
whatever it is.
11.
So now, if you're going to go by seeding, the team that's going to play the worst team, they'll be on the road, but the team that's going to play the worst team in the first round of the tournament is going to be like the 9 or 10 or 11 seed instead of the 1 seed.
Hey.
Explain to me how that makes any sense. That, honestly,
it doesn't.
I could not like that proposal more. I think it makes no sense at all.
It doesn't, but it got a lot of people into their corner, I'll tell you that. So I don't know. But
I'd rather see them just go to straight home site regionals than do that. I mean, that makes no sense to me. But
yeah, I hear you. We're headed that way probably in one way, shape, or form. But again, no one can fully agree. So I don't know when that ever advances to the next level in terms of a actual proposal. Just so many moving parts to a lot of this. That's the thing. Even going back to the age thing, it's like, who steps up and becomes the leader to push the thing forward? To rally into something. And you got to have people willing to compromise and to be pushed. So, but you got to try it. If everyone just kind of bitches and moans for 3 hours in in a round table, it doesn't do anything. So it's just the same arguments all the time. At some point, somebody has to say, look, okay, what do we agree on? What can we do? How's this? You take from column A, take from column B. Should we put this forth? Okay. But that hasn't happened yet. But maybe a little further. I do want to get back to the, before we wrap this interesting experiment up, coaching changes, getting back to that. Nick Oliver going to St. Cloud, Brett Larson going from St. Cloud to Minnesota to kind of set the ball rolling here. Eric Rude going to Anchorage, as I said. Now, the other one, Yale, was searching for a new head coach for a while, I guess. And there was some controversy, I suppose, because the athletic director, Vicky Chun, was raked over the coals by their ex-coach publicly, or at least, a letter that got out that he wrote. It wasn't public when he wrote it. And, the idea that she was still up for, I think she still is up for renewal of her contract as of July 1st, but she gets to make the hire. Okay, putting that aside, who's going to get that job? Well, lo and behold, it goes to Jeff Hamilton, who has never coached anywhere above youth hockey before. He could be the greatest guy in the world. I remember seeing him play. He was a good player for a Yale team that went to the NCAA tournament in 1998 for the first time in forever. And, maybe the greatest guy in the world. I don't really know him that well. I'm looking forward to talking to him finally. But obviously a bit unusual in a vacuum to give a guy with that little experience the job, even though he is an alum. However, he also, I think it's kind of naive to say this doesn't have anything to do with it. He also has a boatload of money. And because he has some private businesses that make a lot of money, some finance businesses. He has some friend alums that also are well off. I think there was a collective push there on that. And it all could work out, but it is unusual. However, I do think it speaks to the modern landscape in college sports. Now, we don't have direct knowledge of these conversations, okay, but it seems as though you would have to think that played a factor when schools are scrambling for money these days. Now, the Ivies can't give NIL or any rev share yet, but what do you think? Am I reading too much into that?
No, I don't think so. I think it'd be I have no concrete info that says it was a deciding factor either, but what else is there? He's an alum and a great player. Yeah. But like you said, there's no coaching resume there really above tier 3 juniors, I think it is. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be a bad coach. You know what? I kind of learned from Marty St. Louis when the Canadians hired St. Louis, and who's buddies with Jeff Hamilton.
I was just going to say they were both doing Junior Rangers stuff in Connecticut.
Yeah, and everybody, raked the Canadians over the coals for that hire. Thought it was terrible, and it's worked out fine. He knows hockey. I'm not worried about him knowing hockey. He understands the game. I think he's going to need an experienced college guy on the staff that understands recruiting, because he's just never done that before. He's worked in player advising, again, to a certain extent. That's one thing I found interesting too. Is Yale pushed that in their release that he owns an advising firm. Feels like a major conflict of interest to me.
I was going to get to that, but as long as you mentioned it.
He messed himself from that, I would imagine.
Because I asked the same question. That's why I said I'm looking forward to talking to him, because I'm curious whether that has been presented to him yet, or if even anyone thought about it yet. But it is against NCAA bylaws, for whatever that's worth these days.
If they matter anymore, yeah.
So theoretically, he does have to divest himself from that. But I don't know. I haven't heard anything that's going to happen anytime soon. So.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that Yale used it in the release.
As
part of experience. I'm like they might be admitting to something they don't necessarily want to admit to here. But who knows? I'm sure once the players are there, he's going to be able to coach. He understands hockey. The guy played in the National Hockey League. I'm sure he understands the game.
Unlike the NHL, though, there's so much more to it in college sports right now, right?
Well, that's what I mean. He's going to need, I think, at least one person on that staff who's experienced in recruiting and kind of not just recruiting, but today's recruiting.
The landscape.
Yes, 100%. Like I think that would be helpful, and we'll see. We'll see what the staff. They haven't even announced the staff yet, so we'll see what the staff looks like.
No. Yeah, we will definitely. It would behoove him to do that. I mean, I was a little less concerned about Martin St. Louis. I've talked to him a bunch of times over the years. I know how cerebral he is. Hall of Fame player. Obviously, not that matters or always leads to being a good coach, but again, you can just go there and coach. You don't have to be the GM. You don't have to be the fundraiser. You don't have to shake hands with donors and alumni. You don't have to do all that stuff. You don't have to recruit. So just coach the team. Yeah. And, so in that regard, a much easier job than Jeff Hamilton will have. But speaking of that money, I mean, I think I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast in March or not, but I've been talking to a lot of coaches in the last 6 weeks or whatever, especially in the ECAC. And speaking of that, Clarkson and BU, who we kind of figured would, have opted into the house settlement. Now, Clarkson's not going to kick in until next year. But what that means is that's basically almost everyone else in the country is in it at this point. There's a couple that aren't. But it gives you the opportunity, not that you have to spend $20.5 million. Obviously, Clarkson's not going to do that in revenue share, but it gives them the avenue, if they can raise extra funds somehow, to dole that out to players, which is something that no one but Quinnipiac had said okay to that at that point, right?
Yeah, Quinnipiac was the only ECAC team to opt in last year.
Yeah, and the Ivies can't. Then you have the 4 Division III schools. Clarkson is one of them, St. Lawrence, Union, and RPI. Those 3 have not, but I've heard the rumblings that once Clarkson does it, the rest of them are going to do it. But that hasn't happened yet, but we'll see.
For those individual sports, that's the other thing. They're not, obviously, Division III school, they're only opting in for hockey.
Right. So now it does take away roster spots, but, they'll have to live with that. That's the only negative, really. And then Colgate's the other one. I don't see them really opting in anytime soon. So, but the point is, I've had a lot of people tell me that if all these schools ever do opt in, and if the Ivy Leagues ever do allow them to opt in, there's a lot of money out there among donors that are hockey alums. I mean, I started doing some research on this. What's that?
I would think the most money.
Yeah.
I mean, look at their endowments. Like, we're talking about the richest schools in the country.
I heard somebody say, now this might be exaggerated, but they said, if the Ivies ever opt in, they're going to rule college hockey.
Honestly, think about it. The cap is $22 million a year, or 22.5, whatever it is. And
yeah,
I don't think those aren't schools that are going to spend a lot of money on football and basketball. We're not talking power for their FCS schools. So,
and even if they do, I mean, it's not going to be the full cap. I mean, you don't need $20 million for hockey players. You just need to match what Michigan's doing.
Yeah,
which is like $1 million.
And there's, I would imagine at the Ivy League schools, there's probably a hockey alum, maybe at all of them, that can say, you know what, I'll give you $2 million a year to go get some players. We'll double what Michigan's is.
I know this sounds crazy because these numbers are ridiculous and we can't sniff them. So when I say all you need, all you need is like $30 million in an endowment fund.
Yeah.
To basically shell out $1 million a year. And there are guys that are hedge fund managers coming out of Ivy League schools and even other ECA schools that are literal billionaires. I looked this up. RPI has a guy. Dartmouth, the owner of Pure Hockey, which apparently he bought because he felt like it with chump change, is a former Dartmouth hockey player. Cornell, for sure, has guys. Harvard, now, again, it's a little weird. We're going to get to this.
Harvard has multiple guys.
Yeah, that are former hockey players. Which dovetails right into what I was talking about because they now have a coaching opening.
They do.
Now, I have to do some more research on this. I haven't asked around. I know that there are, like you just said, plenty of guys with money. I just can't think of them off the top of my head, except for, and I'm not trying to count other people's money here, but Lane McDonald, the 1989 Hobie Baker Award winner. I'm not sure what his net worth is, but it's pretty good. Absolutely one of the nicest guys on God's green earth. I mean, I got to meet him a few times in the 90s. He actually did some color commentary on some of the ECAC tournament games. And he was playing right when I was sort of starting, covering stuff. Just the nicest guy in the world. I remember I've called him a couple times over the year for quotes. But he's got a boatload of money. Now he is not angling to become Harvard's new coach. Okay, he's like almost 60 years old at this point, if not already. And so I'm not suggesting that. But there's two angles to this. One, the money to donate, if ever, rev share was an option. And the other one is what we just saw at Yale, right? Bring your money with you into the coaching position. Ted Donato just stepped down after 22 years. Speaking of guys who did not have any experience when they were hired.
True.
Although he just stepped right out of the NHL. Jeff Hamilton may have more coaching experience at this point than Ted Donato did at the time he was hired.
Yeah.
Mixed results at Harvard, I would say. And, Godspeed to Ted Donato. I'm sure we'll see him around. Great guy as well. But what's going to happen there? I don't even know. Like I said, I can't think there are not a lot of Harvard alums that are coaching. And there are not a lot of, now there are guys with money, but I don't think they're angling to coach. So there's it's like a separate things in this case.
Yeah.
And I'll let you go off on this in a minute, but I keep seeing people throwing out names like Jimmy Vesey, who he's got no experience. I mean, I loved him when he was playing. Dominic Moore, another one. I loved him when he was playing. I remember interviewing, great kid, turned into a great NHL career for himself. But where are these names coming from? If Harvard does that, I don't know if that's a good idea. And they're not hedge fund managers either. So
they're not. I don't know how many. They don't need to be the hedge fund manager themselves. Maybe they need to have just the hedge fund manager attached to them.
Yeah,
right. Like that would certainly help. I don't think. I've asked around a little bit on this. I haven't heard VC's name brought up seriously.
Someone threw it out on social media. Who knows? Yeah, right.
No, nobody's really poo-pooing Dominic Moore, which makes me think that there may be something to that.
Yeah,
like you said, he's been a television analyst, I think, for the Mammoth for the last couple of years.
Super nice guy and really smart. So again,
and I think he still has a house in Boston because he played a year with the Bruins, and I think was living in Boston before he got hired by the Mammoth, and may still have a home here, and obviously connected with some alums. So I don't think that they're close or anything like that, but I don't think there's nothing to that one.
Yeah,
I think there's probably conversation or have been a conversation with there, and then the other ones. I mean, outside of the Harvard family, will they go this route? I don't know, but Jared DeMichael was a finalist for the Yale job. That one makes sense too, right?
It actually shocks me he still wants these jobs.
Yeah.
Just because, go doing great at Michigan State, probably making more money as an assistant coach there.
Yeah.
But, hey, some people really want to be a head coach, so more power to them.
And I wonder, too, with him, he's not from Michigan. He's from New England. I think he's from Connecticut, right? So that's why even more so for Yale, it would have made a lot of sense because I think he's from Avon or something like that, which is not too far from Yale. So maybe that one made more sense than Harvard does, but who knows? Does he want to get back into the Northeast? I don't know. But I know he was a finalist there, so it would be a similar pool, I would imagine. But
I threw out Andy Jones. If I'm Harvard, that's one of the first people I call. Bentley's head coach, and I think I'm usually an inside the Ivy League family kind of person. Like if I was the AD, I would look that way first, but not exclusively. Not where I'm going to blind myself to other possibilities, because I do think that there is something to, just having the familiarity with the Ivy League that is helpful. But if there's no, no obvious candidates in that regard, then you can't hamstring yourself either.
Yeah, I think. I mean, and this might be a pipe dream if you're Harvard, but again, you theoretically have the money to do it. The first guy I would try to go after to see if you could prime away is Reed Cashman. I don't know if you can get him. 5 years ago, I would have told you, yeah, like Harvard is a step up over Dartmouth. That's a no-brainer. Now, I don't know, because he's built something there.
I know, like if you're Reed Cashman, again, like I never try to like make up other people's minds for them. I'm just like, if I'm Reed Cashman, like I think you're doing pretty well at Dartmouth, and there's no reason why you can't continue to do well.
I agree. And then if you can't get him, do you look at Jason Tapp, who's his top assistant, and
sure,
helped build that Union team that won a national title that we talked about earlier as well, right? So, like, is he a guy where you try to copy that Dartmouth blueprint at Harvard with the guy who helped create it?
Yeah, I mean they're and he's a BU alum, right? So
yes,
there are. I mean, Joe Pereira is at BU now. He's right there in the Beanpot mix. I'm trying to think who else. Northeastern, any of their assistants primed for something like that. I can't think off the top of my head, but I mean, there's plenty of good candidates. I threw out Eric Largen's name just because I just think he does a great job at Alaska with what the resources are. I don't know if he even want to go all the way across the world to coach at Harvard, but there's plenty of guys out there. I mean, even Rick Bennett. I mean, again, I don't know if he wants the job, but I'm always thinking of him. I mean, if I'm an AD, I kind of look younger at this point. I think highly of Rick Bennett, and I think he'd be great. But like somebody's almost 60 years old, how many years until you got to do it again, right? So.
Yeah. I had someone say to me the other day, which I found interesting. I don't think there's anything to this at all, but I just thought it was an interesting name. It'd be like, wow. Again, Harvard has the money to pull it off if they wanted to. What if they hired like Peter Laviolette?
Yeah, I heard that name in relation to some other team, and I was like, why would he want to do that? But
I don't know why he'd want to do it either, unless one of these hedge fund Harvard guys is like, we'll pay you $5 million a year to be our coach for the next 5 years. Like, oh.
You got to be careful, like if you're one of those guys, you don't want to just be throwing money down the toilet. And again, it's not that I like Peter Laviolette as a coach, but I mean, do those guys have you'd have to really prove to me that you have the stomach for wanting to recruit now and in the Ivy League to boot.
And that's the thing where staff. I'm sure he can coach.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
It's the staff component and like you said, the recruiting component, having to deal with the portal. Imagine you coming from the NHL and you're like, wait a minute, all of my guys are free agents every year, basically.
And wait, they need what grades to get in?
Yeah.
I mean, that still is a thing at Harvard, I assure you.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
They can fudge a lot, but they got to have some semblance of grades.
Especially at Harvard, too. It's like, I can lose my best player to the portal, but I can't go get a transfer because there's rules on who I can academically take. Like, okay.
Yeah, and I think past a certain period of time, I mean, there's a bunch of Ivy League rules that people aren't even aware of. I mean, were you aware that Princeton has a rule that if they recruit a player and they come to Princeton and then they're locked into that roster spot for 4 years? If that player transfers out, they cannot replace that slot. That is literally I didn't even know this until recently, and I've been around Princeton for 30 years. It's just because it probably never was even an issue back in the day. I mean, guys stayed for 4 years. I mean, it wasn't even a thing, right?
That's a weird rule. That's a weird roadblock to put up in front of yourself.
I mean, there's all sorts of like guys have to be basically accepted. Their application has to be accepted by like April 1st. Most Ivy League schools, which means that any sort of late, guys who get dropped from other teams' recruit list after that are not available to them. Incoming freshmen, I mean. So it's just goofy. All these things that, 10 years ago weren't even an issue. Like,
didn't matter, yeah.
It didn't make a difference. Nobody was dropping players from their recruit list in May. Now they are. And now Ivy League
more frequently.
They can't take advantage of this stuff. So they need to take the reins off their hockey programs. I mean, some of these rules are meaningless, really. I get wanting to uphold certain things, and I'm all for that, but some of them are meaningless. I mean, we get to the games thing, like they're trying to increase games to 40. The Ivy Leagues are at 30.
Yeah.
They just got to 30 from 29. Everyone else is at 34. If they go to 4, it's like, holy smokes, you're 10 games behind? I mean, they got to do something about that too. So, anyway. All right, well, this has been a lot to talk about. We'll do this maybe every 6 weeks or so during the course of the summer. But anything else we forgot while we're at it? As we're trying to solve the world here?
I don't think so. I think for now, those are all the big ones.
Any other bombshell coaching changes going to come out of the blue? I mean, Ted Donato, was it 6-7 weeks after his season ended?
Yeah. That's what's wild about that, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
I mean, you always say, nah, there's nothing, but then there's something.
Yeah, I'm more and more falling into the never say never category with everything now because who knows?
Ram Pecknold is the only coach of the 12 ECAC teams that has not changed over in the last 5 years. That's bonkers.
In the last 5 years?
5 years. All other 11 teams have changed their coaches.
That's wild.
Now, Casey obviously has been around for a while.
Yeah.
He coached 13 years at Clarkson. But, yeah, that's it. I mean, Rand's the elder statesman.
I'm going through it in my head. Yeah. I never thought of it that way, but that's crazy.
Bonkers. All right, on that note, we're out of here. We'll see you.